Hello, everyone, and welcome to APS Webinars. The title of today's webinar is Building Your Professional Pathway During COVID. I'm Midhat Farouk, and I'll be your host for today's broadcast. Thank you all so much for joining us. APS webinars are brought to you as a service of the American Physical Society, connecting you with the expertise of individuals who can offer insight into physics careers, educational programs, and professional development for students, working physicists, and educators. Today's presentation features Crystal Bailey, Head of Career Programs at APS. Crystal will be giving advice for how to keep planning your future career steps during the COVID pandemic. After Crystal finishes the presentation, the remainder of the program will belong to you for our question and answer session. Because of the number of people attending this webinar, we are only accepting text questions. So, if you would like to ask a question, please type it into the questions panel located on the right side of your screen. You may submit questions through the question panel at any time during the webinar, and we will answer all of your questions at the end. We will do our best to cover all of the questions that you submit, but we want to apologize if we are unable to cover everything. Finally, a link to the recording of today's presentation will be emailed to you after today's event and will be made available on the webinar homepage. Please allow 48 hours for video upload. We encourage you to complete the survey upon exiting so that APS Webinars can improve its ability to provide you with these valuable services. And so with that, let's get started. Dr. Crystal Bailey is Head of Career Programs at the American Physical Society, where she provides strategic guidance on APS's portfolio of career-related initiatives, including the NSF-funded APS Pipeline program focused on integrating workforce-relevant skills into undergraduate physics education, APS Job Board and job fairs, career events and activities at APS meetings, and the new APS Careers 2020 Guide created in partnership with the Institute of Physics. Crystal has also developed and managed programs such as the Future of Physics Days events for undergraduates, developed career-related resources on the APS Careers website, managed the APS Distinguished Lectureship Award for the Application of Physics, produced the APS Physics Insight slideshow. She has given over 100 departmental colloquia, conducted numerous career workshops and panels at APS meetings, and authored several articles on careers and professional development related topics appearing in APS News, Physics World, Careers, and Physics Today. Before coming to APS, Dr. Bailey did research in nuclear physics at Indiana University, Bloomington, in the area of few body systems. In 2008, she received the Konopinski Prize Award for Outstanding Graduate Teaching from the IU Physics Department. She graduated with her PhD from IU in 2009. Okay, Crystal, take it away.
Okay, Midhat, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I am thrilled to be able to be with you all today to kind of talk with you about things that you can be doing to kind of keep building your professional path during this crisis. And just to start off, I really wanted to show this cartoon because I saw this on Facebook a few weeks ago and it just really gave me a big chuckle. You know, everybody talks about this time, you know, as though you have this infinite amount of time and energy and resources to kind of spend on things that you know, maybe hadn't been able to get around to doing. When in fact, you know, it is a crisis and a lot of us are experiencing trauma while this is all going on. And, you know, so this just made me laugh. Like, this is it, your time to finish your novel and you're kind of out to sea with the ship broken down and the rain coming down. And so I just want to clarify for, you know, purposes of this presentation that I don't intend it to be kind of a finger wagging you with this is the stuff you should be doing. It's more intended to be a way to convey to you that if you have time and if you have energy and you have reserves, there are still things that you can be doing now that will, you know, build toward your professional future, even though there is a lot of uncertainty and a lot of us are feeling scared. So I'm hoping that this webinar will actually just give you some good things to think about, things that you can do that are relatively simple, relatively straightforward, but can kind of keep you building toward your professional goals. Okay, so the first concept that I really want to talk to you about, one thing that you can be doing in a virtual reality that we're all kind of living in, is to continue building your professional network. So, but there are a couple really important concepts that you need to understand before you start working on that. And it's basically the idea of first degree contacts and second degree contacts. So your first degree contacts are people that you yourself know. So for example, on LinkedIn, they might be people that you're connected to, or people who work in your lab, or your friends, people that are directly connected to you and you have met and have relationships with. But those people who are your first degree contacts also have a pool of first degree contacts, and those folks are your second degree contacts. So second degree is that pool of individuals that are friends of friends, basically the people that your first degree contacts know. And there's a statistic that is shared that about 80% of people actually get their jobs through second degree connections. So that second degree contact pool is actually a really, really magical, that's a little magical set of people. The reason for this is, you know who you know, but you don't know who they know, right? So your second degree contact pool is larger by definition than your first degree contact pool. It is more diverse than your first degree contact pool, right? Because all those people in your first degree contacts know different assortments of people. And it's always growing, even if you are not doing anything. So again, even if you're not meeting people, not networking yourself, the people who are your first degree contacts are doing that in an organic sort of way. So that secondary contact pool is larger, more diverse, always growing, but it is not so remote. I mean, you could also say, well, what about your third degree and your fourth degree? Sure, those are bigger, those are more diverse. The same argument applies. But with the second degree contacts, you can still kind of navigate that. You could ask a friend for an introduction, for example. That's easier than asking a friend of a friend for an introduction, right? So it's kind of a magical place where a lot of opportunity is uncovered. Now, how can you build this network virtually? So LinkedIn is your friend, and I often joke that I should probably be on the payroll of LinkedIn because I can't tell you enough. I always tell people how useful it is. But before we get to this next part, I wanted to make this a little bit interactive. So I wanted to ask, how many of you actually have a LinkedIn account? So we're going to launch a little poll. So Midhat is going to launch the poll. Okay, and I want you to take a moment and click on the screen to describe you and your relationship with LinkedIn. We're going to give you about maybe 10, 15 seconds, and I'll let you know when we're going to close the poll. Okay, I think that's been about 10 seconds. So, okay, let's close the poll and let's show the results. Okay, all right, so about 48% of you have a LinkedIn account but have never used it. A surprising number, a third, use it all the time. That's really fantastic. And about 20% do not have a LinkedIn account. Okay, well, this is interesting. This really kind of gels with when I go and give different department colloquia and I ask people, what about LinkedIn? They'll be like, I set it up, but I really don't think it's very useful, and so they haven't really done anything with it. Well, I'm here to tell you, especially now that we are in a virtual world, LinkedIn is your friend. It is an amazing way to discover those second degree connections and different opportunities. So what you do is sign into, so this is a good way to start, right? Looking for people that you might want to network with. So if you sign into your account, and you notice that I put physics in the search bar here in this screenshot, it takes a couple clicks to get to. It's a little bit awkward, but you click physics and then you go show all results. Then it should give you this option to click people. And then on the right, you will click all filters. So what that does is it actually opens up a larger set of filters, which you see here. So the key thing that you want to be sure that you do is in that left-hand bit where it says connections, make sure that first and second degree connection boxes are checked. Okay. Then from there, you can enter in different keywords. You can look for specific companies. Like in this example that I gave, like I could look for Google, Apple, Intel, people who are in those companies who have physics in their background and are first and second degree connections. That's what that combination of filters will do for you. And then you click apply, and it'll give you a big listing of everyone who meets those criteria. So from there, you scroll down the list. I mean, if you have time, you might as well go in there, explore, look at different people who are doing careers that you think would be interesting to learn more about. And again, they're either going to be your first degree connection or your second degree connection if you have clicked these filters. If they are a second degree connection, LinkedIn will tell you who your shared contact is. And then it's just as simple as emailing that shared contact and asking them for an introduction. And it's really a much better way to connect with people than sort of cold calling folks, finding them out in the internet and just kind of sending them a random email. If you can get an introduction through a mutually shared acquaintance, they're just going to be more likely to kind of respond. So that is a really powerful way that you can find those second degree connections and make contact with them. Another way you can do this and find new connections in a virtual world is to attend virtual meetings. So, APS, as you all know, a big part of what we do is have meetings. And we did there's a portion of March that was virtual, but APS April meeting was fully virtual. It happened April 18th through 21st. We had nearly 7,000 attendees. So it was a far larger meeting than it would have been typically in person. And we did schedule a career panel and networking session where we got different folks from industry and different career paths, and there was a really nice panel discussion, and we organized a private networking session afterward so that everyone could actually network directly with those speakers. So we did this kind of thing at April meeting, and there's also the APS DayMop meeting that's coming up in June. This will also be a fully virtual meeting. We are going to be offering another career panel with about industry careers and AMO physics in a career workshop. So please look into that. If you want to come to that meeting, it'll be a great opportunity to learn about careers in industry and meet different people. And we are looking at ways to make those virtual meetings more effective as a way to network. It's also really important to note, and you've probably heard this before, this situation, this crisis is going to change a lot of things, and it certainly will change the meeting industry. Moving forward, I think you can very much expect that a lot of, even if some of the APS meetings become in person, there will be a virtual component. So I guess what I'm trying to say, it's the whole proverbial lemons to lemonade. I mean, it is a really weird situation, but because we're learning how to do these things more effective virtually, and the tools that we are using to help people network are improving really, really quickly because they have to in this environment. This is actually a great opportunity for you to expand your reach. So whereas it may not have been feasible at some time in the past for you to travel to a meeting in person, you can maybe these virtual experiences are more accessible for you. So look to virtual meetings as another opportunity to do this expanded networking. Oops. Okay, so the next step, in addition to building your network, is actually to take this time to explore different career paths. So let's say you've gone through the effort of kind of building out your network, you've met some interesting people, you've got your contacts with them, you've gotten your introductions and you're on their calendar. So now what? Well, there's this really, really great tool called an informational interview. And I also am just curious, we're going to do another poll to see how many of you have heard of informational interviews before. So Leslie, Midhat, could you please launch that? So again, we're going to do this thing where you just answer yes or no. We'll give it a few seconds. Okay, closing the poll in. Oh, okay, it's closed. That's fine. All right, you want to show the results? Okay, so 61% have not and 39% have. That's actually surprising. Often fewer people than that have actually heard of informational interviews. Okay, but most of you haven't. All right. So I was looking for an image to kind of describe this. And I mean, I went with this kind of trail marker. I get lots of questions all the time from students about really, really specific career paths. You know, I can answer a lot general, but you know, I get very like, what does a patent lawyer do exactly? You know, who has this kind of a background and works in this kind of a firm. I can't necessarily answer those questions, and certainly probably your research advisor can't. But the best way to know the way forward is to ask people who have actually done it themselves. And that's the whole purpose of this kind of trail marker, is like, you know, ask someone who's done it, ask someone who's been there before. And that's exactly what an informational interview is. It is a secret weapon for you to get really deep insight into specific career paths. So an informational interview is 30 minutes or so, maybe an hour. You get to talk to a person who's in an industry or company or working in a kind of position that is of interest to you. You can use LinkedIn, professional networks, anyone you meet at virtual meetings, anyone that you're building into your network, you can ask them for an informational interview. Most people in the outside world kind of know what that is. So if you emailed somebody that you got an introduction and said, hey, gosh, I'd really love to do an informational interview with you, would that be okay? They would know exactly what that is, and they would be 100% fine with it. And it's a little bit like a job interview turned on its head. So instead of them asking you questions, you ask them questions. So here are some examples of informational interview questions you could use to really gain a deeper insight into that industry. You could ask them, what is your typical day like? What do you do? How is your industry being affected by this crisis, right? A lot of us really want to know what industries are still healthy, which ones are really impacted, how are they impacted, what is the longer term effects of this, you know, under different scenarios. That is a very reasonable thing to ask somebody in an informational interview. You could also ask things like, what would be the best skills for me to market if I wanted to enter this field? You can even ask something like, what are typical salaries for someone in this field? That is a completely appropriate question, because this is not in any way, shape, or form a job interview. You're not here to kind of jockey for a position. You're here to give information, or sorry, to get information from this person. And so advice related to that, again, I can't emphasize it enough. Please don't ask for a job or even angle for a job. That happened to me once in an informational interview, and it was just really kind of awkward because I wasn't hiring. I didn't know of any opportunities, and that's really not what people sign up for when they agree to do an informational interview. They're there to give you information about what they do and kind of answer some of these questions. That said, you may want to have an up-to-date CV or kind of at least a representative technical resume handy, because you never know. I mean, if you do happen to have a really good conversation with them and you really click and they're really impressed with your questions, they might say, hey, you know what? Why don't you forward over your CV? I mean, you know, I'll let you know if there are any opportunities that come up. It never hurts to have that document ready. So don't hand it to them, but have it ready in case they ask. And who knows, you know, even if they don't want to get in touch with you later with new career opportunities at their company, again, if that conversation goes well and you click, that person can become part of your professional network. And so someday when you need a little bit more targeted advice, if you need help, you know, evaluating an opportunity, stuff like that, you can then tap that person and they will become a permanent part of your network if that conversation goes well. So that's a little bit of advice on using informational interviewing. Okay, another bit of advice is to polish your online presence. Because again, LinkedIn figures in a lot to this advice because it's a great tool for doing things virtually. Oh, use a good image on your profile. I should have set up another poll. How many of you have the blank avatar that is, don't even bother to put up a professional looking photo or anything like that? I wish I'd added a poll, but I can kind of see people raising their hands. And of course, that mechanical message, I'd like to add you to my professional network, you know, that impersonal, just really, really bad. Because as we already described, in the earlier slides, LinkedIn is largely valuable as a way to either ask for introductions or make introductions. And I am neither going to ask someone for an introduction to do one for me or make an introduction for someone else if I don't know who you are. And so when I get a LinkedIn connection request like this, might have your name, but it doesn't have a face and it has this just generic message, I'm probably not going to accept that. Because again, I just wouldn't, I don't know enough, I don't have enough information to feel comfortable doing an introduction for you or asking you for an introduction. So it's, a lot of times when people meet folks, they might not remember names, but they will also, they will most likely remember faces. So put a picture of yourself on your LinkedIn profile. It doesn't have to be a glamour shot. You don't have to be wearing a suit. This picture, I actually had my husband take of me this afternoon with my smartphone. So, many of us have smartphones. We can take a well-lit, not terrible picture of ourselves to put on our LinkedIn profile. And just having that extra bit of information will really help people remember you when you actually try to connect with them. Related to that, you should always use a personal message when requesting connections. So this is just a screenshot of some folks who came up in my feed. So, you click the connect button, and what that does, it used to not actually give you this option. It used to just send the generic greeting. Now it gives you an option always to type this message. It's really, really important that you build a little bit of context for why you're requesting this connection. So for example, someone who met me at one of my workshops might say, hey, I really enjoyed your presentation at the DAMOP meeting. I spoke with you about career opportunities in such and such company. I'd love to connect with you. Of course, I'm going to accept that request. I mean, sure, happy to do it. But it's really useful for two reasons, to remind people of the context for your connecting with them. Number one, as I kind of already described, it'll make them more likely to accept it. It's just not some random person who just found you on the internet. It will also help them better understand what they can do to help. And something you should understand about networking that came up in some discussions I had with people at the virtual April meeting, I think a lot of physics students are trained when you're networking, when you're asking someone for a favor, you feel like it's rude to be direct and sort of, say, this is what I need. But in fact, that actually makes the whole process go much more smoothly for everyone. You're not being rude at all. In fact, when a student or somebody comes up to me and they want to talk to me about something, I would much rather them say, hi, this is my background. I'm interested in these kinds of opportunities. What advice do you have for me? I would much prefer that than for them to come up and just kind of, hi, and just stand there in silence for a while. So being direct about the kind of support you need actually is better for everyone involved. And it helps the person who you're reaching out to as well. So be direct, tell them what you want. That's my advice. Also, I want to say the LinkedIn profile is a really, really great, it's a great tool. First of all, it's extremely intuitive to use. If you go onto your LinkedIn profile, that's again, just a screenshot of mine, you can go and add a profile section. That's what that little circle is for. And if you click down on that, you'll see that there are different sections. So there's an about section. That's where you can put in statements about your goals and your priorities, establishes your brand, if you will. It's really important to put some thought into the statement you're making about yourself and what your priorities are, what you want to accomplish. Really, what goes in that about section is kind of what you would say to somebody if you were meeting them in person, who you are, what your interests are, and what you want to accomplish. It's really important that you spend some time making that a polished statement and make it succinct, because it kind of establishes your brand. In the background section is where you put the typical stuff like your previous work experience, education, any licenses or certifications that you've earned, volunteer experience. And the beautiful thing about LinkedIn is that it literally goes through it almost like a questionnaire. Like you just answer questions, you upload stuff. It even has a little like a rate tool that will tell you if this section needs work or if it could be improved. I found when I most recently went through and updated my profile that the whole process went extremely smoothly. It definitely took some time, but what I ended up with was so much more polished than anything I would put as a PDF CV somewhere on a research website. Skills, your skills section is also really important. You know, all of your scientific, technical, workplace relevant skills. You may have noticed that LinkedIn also has a way for other people to endorse you. I find that to be a little bit awkward. You know, sometimes I get endorsements for skills from people that really I don't, you know, think are particularly qualified to do that. But at the very least, if you put your own skills there, it will give people who are searching on LinkedIn a sense of what you can do. And accomplishments is also an extremely important section. It also has, you know, it gives you an opportunity to highlight specific projects, products, publications, awards, things that you've achieved, things that you really want to kind of show off to the world. It's very, very important. Again, I think physics students are often not encouraged to speak out about their accomplishments and their worth, but it's very, very important. Don't be embarrassed. You know, put your best foot forward and put what you've accomplished out there. Another reason why a well-written LinkedIn profile is worth your time and way better than that CV PDF sitting over there on the, you know, research website that hasn't been updated since 1995. Companies are increasingly relying on third-party companies to go do recruitment. So it's becoming a much more common model for industries to hire companies to go out and look for talent rather than just relying on people who apply for jobs directly to the website. Instead of a they come to us model, it's we go to them model. And I can tell you that LinkedIn is the premier professional networking platform that is used by headhunters. It's used by people who are going out looking for talent actively. So your LinkedIn profile sitting out there, it is keyword searchable, and it is right in front of all of those people who are out there looking for talent for companies. That PDF of your CV sitting over on that research site is not. So again, this if you take the time to invest in making a really good profile on LinkedIn, it will do work for you. It is worth the time. Okay, another thing that you can spend time doing if you have the time, update your CV and or resumes. And also it's very important that you know the difference. CVs are comprehensive, exhaustive listings of every experience or product within your professional lifetime, and resumes are short, succinct documents containing only skills and expertise relevant to a specific job. This is very, very important to understand. CVs, there's no page limit. It's more or less a static document, meaning, you know, you edit it periodically, like maybe every 6 months to put in all the stuff you've done in the last 6 months. It includes every professionally relevant thing, the degrees you've earned, positions held, presentations, publications, courses taught, grants that you've been a PI on, blah, 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 etc. Whereas a resume is only 1 page, no more than 2. It is literally a function of the job description. I have students ask me all the time, will you look at my resume? I say, yeah, show me the job description. I cannot evaluate your resume without a job description. It is a function of the job description. So it cannot exist without a specific job in question. When should I write a CV versus a resume? So national labs and academic jobs have very similar hiring practices. And so if you are preparing an academic package, you know, a package for an academic job, you will definitely be submitting a CV. On top of that, you know, a research proposal and letters and your statement and a budget and blah, blah, blah. There's a whole lot to that. But a CV is absolutely the appropriate document. And that's also true for national lab jobs. But everything else, industry careers, do not submit a CV. There's a woman who used to do career workshops for us. She was a very high level hiring manager for some tech companies. She said, listen, if you don't have my attention on the top half of the first page, I am not looking at your application. Don't waste anyone's time with this giant long CV with a whole bunch of irrelevant information in it. You want to make a skills-based resume, a targeted document that pertains only to those skills that are asked for in that job description for industry jobs. So here are a couple of resources. I'm not going to actually go through that process today, but if you go to go.aps.org/physicsresume, I do a video tutorial on how you convert a CV to a skills-based resume for an actual job from our job board. So please check out that URL. If you're looking for advice on how to do an academic CV, the University of California, San Francisco has a really nice website in their Career Center, and it's sample materials for faculty jobs. So if you Google UCSF sample materials for faculty jobs, it'll take you to a really nice set of instructions on how to do an academic CV. But general advice, and this picture over here to the right is the Tower of Babel. And basically, you know, the whole idea here is if you're speaking different languages, if the language you're speaking is not hearable or understandable by the person you're speaking to, it's not gonna do you any good. Communication skills are important both in person and virtually. And really your resume, cover letter, these kinds of documents that you'd be sending to people is absolutely an important part of your ability to communicate. So it's really important to shape the communication you use to fit your audience. So for example, if you're writing a skills-based resume for an industry job and that job description has words like data analysis and you know, vacuum systems, you use those exact words in your resume. Don't use more jargon, don't use more specific words. Let the words in the job description be your cue. Especially with a skills-based resume, you want to give the most relevant information first. And that's actually true for academic CVs. So for example, if you were applying for a job at a four-year college where teaching is a really big skill set that you need to have, you'd want to emphasize the teaching experience that you have in your CV. You'd want to put it closer to the top. You know, and definitely that's true for the industry resumes. You want to make sure that you are really focusing on the skills they're asking for in the job description. You want to be direct and you want to use the right language. So no inappropriate jargon. Folks, I also feel like this is an important moment to give you some real talk. And if any of you have been to my normal career session, you'll know that I usually start things off with these statistics. I didn't do it today. So on the left, we have the number of PhDs conferred in the United States through 2018. And yes, they're citizens and non-citizens, but these are all people who remained in the US workforce. On the right-hand side, we have the number of faculty hired by physics departments in tenured and tenure track positions, meaning permanent positions, not positions that are by definition temporary. Well, right away, if you look at the left, you look at the axis, you'll notice there's a scale difference. And if you look at the ratio, if you go back to 2010, the ratio of new faculty to the PhDs conferred that year is 16%. Okay, so you say, all right, but wait a minute, you know, we know that most people, when they get permanent faculty jobs, they've done a few postdocs, you know, they don't go right in after grad school. You're right. Even after 6 years, if you take 2010 versus 2016, that ratio has grown to 18%. And with COVID, as more universities, they're imposing hiring freezes. Y'all, it's a reality. The number of new faculty hires will probably be significantly lower moving forward. Okay, so that's just important information that you need to know. Before COVID, those jobs were limited and they're going to continue to be limited. As a contrast, when you look at the APS Job Board, since April 1st, so this is kind of roughly the beginning of lockdown in a lot of places, there were 211 private sector jobs posted. And what's interesting is private sector jobs comprised 43% of the total number of jobs since April 1st. In all of 2019, there were closer to 20 on our job board. So that tells you something. Companies that were posting included Google, Microsoft, Zurich Instruments. That's not to say that private sector careers are, or like private sectors are not affected. Sorry, there are still problems in the private sector in terms of hiring. Not every industry is doing great, but there is still a lot of opportunity there. And so, and you know, a lot of companies are pivoting. You know, a lot of companies that, especially with quantum information systems, you know, things that don't necessarily require you to come to an office or be in a lab, they're still hiring. So what I'm trying to say is, I always say this, that you should broaden your scope beyond academic careers. That is true now more than ever. Look around. This is the perfect opportunity to expand your horizons. I say, you know, I call this guy on the right, he's looking through the rose-colored binoculars at this kind of academic career when the path of life is snaking around in front of him. Take those binoculars down, look around, and I would say, if you have time and you want to practice writing CVs and resumes, take time practicing writing both. You can work on your CV, but also write some resumes for some industry jobs on our job board. It's a great time to practice. Okay, so I'm going to transition now to talk a little bit about some resources that we have. So as I already mentioned, the APS Job Board, it's a shared jobs database. So Physics Today, American Vacuum Society, IEEE Computing, a lot of different organizations collaborate with us. So we have a shared jobs database. If you post a job through the APS portal, it's actually visible to all of those partners. So employers looking through any of those portals will see your resume. Yeah, and any employer who posts a job through APS, it will be visible to job seekers on all those portals. So it's a great way to just get more visibility, both for your resume if you're a job seeker or you're posting if you're an employer. It has great intuitive filters. You can do easy keyword searches. You can store multiple versions of your resume, as we just talked about. That's important. And it is 100% free for job seekers. You do not have to be an APS member to use our site. So go on there, create an account, look at the jobs, write a few practice resumes, you know, apply for some jobs, you know, you never know. And yeah, take advantage of that, just at least to see what's out there. I also very strongly recommend that you all take advantage of the APS Impact Program. It stands for Industry Mentoring for Physicists, and it's a way to link up grad students, early career physicists to physicists in industry. You do have to be an APS member to access Impact as a mentee, and you can do a search through a database yourself on a variety of characteristics. So you can, you know, person's background, their professional experience, what kind of topics they're comfortable covering with you. And basically the way it works is you request a relationship, and then it's up to you and the mentor to figure out how you want to communicate. But again, everybody's on Zoom. So I suspect there'd probably be a lot of Zoom calls in your future, which is great. Again, it's a wonderful way to get information directly from somebody who is working in one of these industries. And because they're signed up as a mentor, they have already agreed they're ready and willing to help you out. So please take advantage of this resource. Also, we're doing this summer professional development webinar series. So if you go to this URL, go.aps.org/summer webinars, you can sign up if you haven't already. This is the first of many of these. And next week, next Tuesday, we're doing a webinar on international students and the APS response to the pandemic. So, you know, APS has been really active to try to speak on behalf of international students, deal with some visa issues. And so Frances Slakey and Amy Flatten, Amy is with the International Affairs at APS, and Slake is with the Office of Government Affairs. They're going to be talking about all the stuff that APS has been doing. So please tune in for that next week. Other topics that we are planning, there are a lot that we're going to be covering over the next few months. You know, career opportunities in different sectors, jobs in industry, high school physics teaching, writing CVs and resumes. So we're going to do more in-depth webinars on those topics. Also things like managing conversations, negotiation skills, bystander training. We have a lot of really nice things lined up. So sign up for our series, and you will get updates every time that there is an upcoming webinar. I also want to just really briefly mention a resource that might be useful to you. It's not really professional development related exactly, but there was an act passed by Congress that provides money specifically targeted to help offset hardship for students, for graduate students. So the way that the money is being distributed, it's actually up to each individual institution. It's not directly available from the government. But if you are experiencing hardship and you do want to apply for this aid, you need to contact your graduate student representatives at your institution. And if you don't have somebody immediately that you know to reach out to, then you can try your dean of students or your chancellor. There's a little bit of information at this URL, but I just wanted to mention that that is a resource that is available. I also want to quickly say we have an online professional guidebook. So a lot of these topics like self-assessment and networking, informational interviewing, all this kind of stuff, we have it available all the time on demand on the APS website. So if you go to this URL, you can look at each of those chapters. There's a lot of really great resources. Some sample informational interview questions are there, for example. So you might want to check that out. APS also recently put together a really cool guide in connection with the Institute of Physics. And it's a really nice resource. We've got profiles of physicists working in different career paths. We've got professional development articles. We've got a nice medical physics careers spread. And there is a directory of companies and organizations that are hiring. So go to this URL, check it out. That's the digital version. It's a very, very nice, very readable kind of digital version to the magazine. So definitely check that out. So again, just to kind of summarize, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. These are extraordinary and extraordinarily challenging times for everyone. There's a lot of uncertainty. Again, no pressure. We're not saying, oh, don't, that you ought to be doing all this, that, and the other. It's more, if you have time and you have the energy, there are things you can do. And there may even be unique opportunities that arise because of this situation, like being able to network a little bit further afield than you normally would. Having access to Zoom allows you to have more conversations. Maybe you have a little bit more time to spend updating your LinkedIn profile, your CV, your resume. But most importantly, I want you all to know that APS really cares about you, and we are here to help. So I really want to encourage each and every one of you to reach out to us if you have questions, concerns, anything you need help with. We're here. And with that, I think I'll wrap things up.
Okay, thank you so much, Crystal. That was wonderful, and I'm sure a lot of people found that useful. This is a reminder to all the attendees that you can enter in your questions through the chat window that is part of the panel, the side panel on your screen. So go ahead and enter your questions. Meanwhile, I will start while y'all are thinking of things to ask. So one of my questions is, what if I'm trying to reach to someone to schedule an informational interview, to expand my network, to make a new connection, and I'm not hearing back? I know that people in industry tend to be very busy. How many times is too many times for me to email someone to try to set up an interview with them? Or what other strategies could I use?
Yeah, so that is an excellent question. And I think some good advice that I've heard and that I will share with you, it's kind of like 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing. So first of all, yes, the key thing to remember, if you do reach out to somebody and they don't respond to you, do not take it personally. Don't think, oh no, they don't, I'm just a lowly student, they're, oh, I shouldn't have asked, please don't think that. People are busy. Things go off their inbox all the time. I guarantee you in 90% of situations, they are intending to get back to you, but it just slipped off their radar. So if you don't hear from somebody after like a week or so, week, 10 days, write them another email. Absolutely. Be like, hey, just following up, wondering if you have a minute to chat. I'd really love to connect with you. I have, some questions. It'd be great to be in touch. Follow up, be polite, be casual, it's fine. And if you don't hear again, you can ask a third time, really briefly, hey, just following up, would like to connect with you. And if they don't respond after your third, just move on. For whatever reason, it's just not a thing that they're able to do. But certainly don't be shy about following up, especially if it's your first time and you haven't heard back. Chances are they're just really, really busy.
Thank you. I still don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and ask another one. So if I am someone who is and I have a hard time connecting with people or approaching people in person, do you have any strategies for how to do this virtually, especially if there is an online meeting that is happening and I am not sure how to approach someone? What can I do to help myself get there?
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question too. And I think this has to do generally, this is just general advice for networking. So a lot of people, I think of networking as an innate ability. Like you're either like a born schmoozer or you're not. And either you're really super comfortable around people and can just go up and talk to anybody, or you're not. And that's not true. Networking is a skill, just like learning to play the piano, just like learning to ride a bike. It's a skill that can be learned, and it is learned through practice. So my advice, whether it's in person or virtual, right? The first thing you need to do is really be clear. And I kind of talked about this during the webinar presentation. It helps to be really clear about who you are and what you want. So like when I was a grad student at Indiana, my networking, what I might have said to somebody is, oh, hi, my name's Crystal Bailey. I'm a grad student at Indiana University. I'm in nuclear physics right now, but I'm actually really interested in careers in physics education research. Like that would be a thing I would say to somebody at a networking event. It's like who I am, what my background is, and what I actually want to accomplish. So what I tell people is, this is another thing you could do with your time, is develop pitches, like a networking pitch, who you are, what you want. And you should develop different length pitches. So maybe one that's appropriate for like a 5-minute conversation. Maybe one that's appropriate for a minute-long conversation, and maybe one that's like 30 seconds. Like you're on an elevator, right? The elevator pitch, the infamous elevator pitch. The thing I gave is like an elevator pitch. It's just quick. But I would actually think about write it out, write those things out. 5 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Who you are, what you want, that's what you're conveying. And I would create a version of that pitch that is appropriate for a peer or another physicist, and a version that is appropriate for your grandma. And I mean, there's a reason for that, which is basically, you never know when you're out in the real world, when you're out like physically in the real world, you never know who you're going to bump into. So the person sitting next to you on the plane might be the CEO of a company that's doing really, really cool physics, but she's not herself a physicist. So being able to actually talk about your skills in a way that's meaningful to anyone can really benefit you. Now, that is less likely in a situation where we're all in lockdown and you're actually seeking people out. But I guess the key thing is just make sure that you develop different versions of your pitch that would be meaningful to different people. And I would recommend you practice. Like seriously, we're all trying to stay connected with our friends. Maybe you're having Zoom calls where you have drinks, happy hour or something. Maybe get together with your friends and have let's practice our pitches. It's kind of silly, but it's a way to practice that with other people and get feedback from them. So that is one thing I would spend time doing. And I guarantee you that if you have done that and you've got a little practice under your belt, you are going to feel a little bit better going into situations like, say, at a virtual meeting where you meet someone and you want to strike up a conversation. That practice goes a long way to alleviating anxiety.
Okay, I found the questions. Sorry about that. Okay.
Don't be bashful.
Here's a comment and a question. Hi, great talk. When is a good time to apply for jobs, industry or postdocs?
Okay, so that's a really good question. In industry, they are hiring all year round. And again, we're still waiting to see what the impacts are on industries. I mean, I think we're all kind of in limbo with COVID, but certainly I'm keeping a close eye on the job board, and there are 200 jobs on the job board right now. And but generally speaking, under normal circumstances, industries are hiring all the time, all year round, and there's no sort of preferred window. With national labs, it's a little bit different. So the way that hiring approvals tend to happen for postdoc positions, for example, at national labs, they tend to all get approved in one go. Like there's a lot of approvals that have to happen, a lot of funding. It's tied to funding cycles. So a lot of national labs will actually start recruiting for positions in the fall. So the APS Division of Plasma Physics meeting, DPP, which always happens in October and November, we have a ton of national labs, and some of them are posting like 60 positions as a part of this event. So I would say fall is a really good time frame to start looking at positions at national labs. That's a really common time that they start to advertise. And by the way, I want to mention that it's unclear right now if DPP will be in person or if it will be virtual. But regardless of if it's in person or fully virtual, we will have a virtual component to our job fair. So again, talk about opportunities, right? If you have a background in plasma physics and you wouldn't have normally been able to travel to DPP, because we're probably going to be doing a hybrid version, you now have access because we're doing a virtual component. So that's something to bear in mind, but keep an eye out on our website, because we will be marketing upcoming virtual job fairs.
Thank you. We have another question. What would an introduction to a potential connection look like? Would this be an email exchange with the person doing the introduction or some sort of Zoom call?
It would be an email at first, I think. So let's say you found somebody on LinkedIn, you want to connect with them. So you email your buddy, and I mean, you could Slack them or text them, depending on your relationship with the shared connection. So like if it was my best friend, I mean, I might text and be like, hey, I noticed that you know so-and-so. I would really love to meet them. Would you do an introduction? You could text them, but in most situations, it would be an email. Hi, I really am interested in doing an informational interview with so-and-so. I noticed that you're connected with them on LinkedIn. Would you be willing to do an email intro for me? Email is nice because it's a convenient way for the person doing the introduction to make that connection. All they have to do is respond to you and copy the person, or they might send a new email to the person you want to meet, but copy you. So email is a really nice way to do that. And that would be a first step. And then once they've made that introduction, and the person you want to meet has responded, then you can set up a Zoom call with that person.
Okay, here's a question that we didn't talk much about during the talk, so I'll ask it. How about cover letters? And I think they're just asking for general advice.
Yes, I'm really glad that you asked about that too, because it's actually very important. Especially, when it comes to skills-based resumes, which is the thing I said, it's really important that you use a resume when you're applying for an industry job. And that resume has to be, the specific skills that they're looking for. But the purpose of the cover letter is threefold, really. It helps the employer picture you in that position. It's a nice kind of personalized way. It's a more poetic way, I guess, maybe of helping that employer visualize you in that role and connect the dots between the skill set that you have and the skills that they're looking for. But it's also a really important opportunity for you to address gaps that might be on your resume, or things that just might look a little odd if somebody's just like looking at your resume, things you specifically want to address. I'll give you an example. Like, let's say that you have been working on certain things for your entire career and you want to go in a completely different direction. You're like, I no longer want to do that. I want to do something completely different. If you submitted a resume trying to highlight the skills that you had that were relevant, but then also had some skills that were in a different direction, as an employer, I might look at that and be like, oh, well, this person obviously applied for the wrong job. Like they don't have any of the skills we're looking for. But if you say in your cover letter, you may be noticing that I actually don't have a lot of experience in this area. Nevertheless, I'm really, really passionate about this opportunity and want to build these new skills. Let me tell you why. Doing something like that in a cover letter is really going to get an employer's attention. It's thoughtful. It helps them picture you in the role. Here's a perfect example. Some years ago, we were hiring an intern who was going to work on the APS Careers website and write profiles for us. And in the job description, I had put, we wanted to hire a physicist because, we're APS. We tend to like to hire physicists. Physics bachelor. We wanted that person to have a lot of writing experience, some web experience. And I got a resume from a candidate who was a chemistry major with a minor in anthropology. And when I looked at her resume, I was like, well, I'm not seeing a lot here that really jumps out at me. And so initially, just looking at her resume, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is the right fit. And then I read her cover letter, and that's exactly what she said. She said, you've noticed I am not a physics major. Well, but I am a scientist. I really, really care about the work that scientific societies do. I want to support that. She laid out this really nice argument about like why she cares about this job. Yes, it is the right job, and this is why she wants to do it. And then she said, you might also notice that I'm an anthropology minor. In my work as an anthropology minor, I carried out a lot of interviews on the phone. I wrote down a lot of transcripts, and I was just like, oh my gosh, she has exactly the skill set I'm looking for. And it didn't come across on the resume, but it came across in the cover letter. And that cover letter is what took her off the no pile and onto the yes pile. We ended up hiring her, and she was phenomenal. So that's an example of how you can use the cover letter to kind of fill in the gaps that might be there on your resume.
Great. So we have a lot of questions. I'm just going to try to get through a couple more. I know there is a slight stigma in finishing your educational career with only a master's degree in a physics-related field. Is there anything you can say speaking to the validity of that idea?
Great question. And I would say the only stigma exists in academia among those people who are interested in permanent academic careers, which is, as you saw from the statistics, a minority. There is absolutely nothing wrong with a master's degree. I know a lot of people who have master's degrees in physics and have gone on to extremely successful careers. And if you actually look on the APS Job Board, you will see that a very significant number of those positions are terminal masters. They are asking for a terminal master's degree in physics. So I think I'm not disagreeing. I could understand why someone might get the impression that there is a stigma, because I think of those who are only thinking about academic careers, they have a certain way of thinking about master's degrees. But when it comes to the real world and applying to jobs, there are tons of opportunities for people with master's degrees. So if you are in a graduate program and you may not be sure about wanting to actually finish your PhD, look on the job board, see if there are opportunities for people with master's degrees. And if you see something interesting, you go for it. You drop out of grad school and don't look back, because you have found a career that you want. That's the key thing. We want you to have careers that are going to make you happy and you're going to be successful in.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry if I'm just bombarding you with questions. We have so many coming in, which is great. Okay, here we have a question. What would you recommend for staying relevant for academic positions? Pre-COVID, graduate students and postdocs would give presentations at different institutions and conferences. What would you recommend we do to help with visibility about your research?
Oh boy, that is a really, really good question. And you're absolutely right. The opportunities, even though, there's still a lot going on virtually, the opportunities to kind of get out there and present your research are, it's a challenge. I would say, certainly, APS is going to continue to hold meetings, for example, scientific meetings. And so certainly take advantage of those opportunities to give poster presentations, to give contributed talks. We're still doing those things. So look into APS virtual meetings as a way to do it. And again, finding speakers who are at these meetings, scheduling a separate Zoom conversation with them so you can network. That would be one piece of advice. The other thing I would say is it's really important. Okay, it's true for all careers, even academic careers. Of those who successfully get permanent careers in academia, it relies so much on your network. Whether it's academia or industry, network is everything. So if you have started to build relationships with people, and hopefully if you're going for an academic career, you have started that process of building relationships with people who can position you to be successful, to have a successful application. There's no rule that says you can't just contact them out of the blue and be like, hey, you want to just have a call? You want to just chat? I'd love to stay in touch with you. It's really, these relationships are kind of like plants. You do have to kind of nourish and feed them. So I would advise you to get in touch with people that you've been building relationships with and just touch base, connect with them, catch up with them, see what's going on, see how they're doing, and try to keep those connections fresh. That would be my advice.
Okay, thank you so much, Crystal, for answering all of those questions in so much detail and with so much useful advice. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have today for the official webinar. We apologize if we did not get to your questions. We encourage you to follow up by sending an email to webinars@aps.org, and we will forward your questions to Crystal for comment. A recording of the video will be emailed to you within 48 hours, and we will also be posting it on the summer webinar homepage. Lastly, in order to help APS continue to develop quality webinar presentations, please help us by taking a moment to complete the short survey as you exit the webinar today. This wraps up today's event. We hope you'll join us again next time. Thank you so much for calling in, and I hope everyone has a great day.